So this video is about why you should never ever live on a narrowboat.
Ever, 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 ever.
I do believe in the saying, follow your bliss, but I'm not sure this is my bliss. And why am I saying that? Well, it's a few days after our blacking. We're back on our boat, back on the canal, thank goodness. We had a couple of days to relax, but we've just spent a week blacking our boat. So what does this mean? Well, let me just very quickly explain. When you put a boat in water, the metal oxidizes. And obviously you don't want that to happen too much because it starts to get pitting, and if the pitting gets deep enough, then you get holes, and then water comes in and your boat could eventually sink. So what you do with a narrowboat is every few years, and there's debate about how often, but every few years you get it out of the water and you black it. And that's what we've just done. And it was a hell of an experience.
Exhausting.
Yeah. So day one was the power spray. Okay, so they brought us in 9 o'clock in the morning. We just towed into the dry dock. They pumped the water out and the boat just settled down on these giant beams, wooden beams, okay? That's 20 tons of steel resting on wooden beams. And then the fun really begins because they give you this power spray and a machine that spurts water out at enormous pressure, and you use that to spray down the sides of the boat and underneath if you can get underneath there. So the idea is you get all the waste stuff off your boat as fast as possible. You need a day to do that really and let it dry.
It is kind of satisfying though. I mean, you've got all this little crud on the bottom of your boat, and you sort of get this massive gun which is strong enough to knock you off your feet, and you get to sort of fire it at all the nasty bits on the bottom of the boat. There's a sort of enjoyment, if enjoyment includes also standing in a foot of absolutely filthy mud and occasionally getting knocked over into said mud. But, you get to clean your boat.
I'm not entirely convinced there, because I remember that day, we were standing in oily water, it's freezing cold, it's power spray, the noise is enormous. It's not the most pleasant experience, so it's a hard way to begin. But I can understand a certain satisfaction of seeing all the sides exposed. But the problem with that, of course, when you see the sides exposed, you start to see all the little pits where the steel has been eaten into. Okay,
yes, it kind of looks like the surface of the moon sometimes.
Yeah, it does look a bit like that.
Not that I'm saying our boat looks exactly that way, but let's just say there were some bumps unearthed.
So what comes next? So day 2 we had to begin blacking. Now the traditional stuff is a thick bitumen. It's like kind of tar really, probably the same stuff they make roads with, tarmac roads with. But we chose to use something called keel black, which is works on a different basis, and very few boaters have used this. Yeah, that's better. I'm getting a bit hot under my hat here. And anyway, we put this on day 2, the first blacking. All right, all the way round the keel, round under the bow of the boat as well. We didn't quite get underneath. There's an argument about
heated argument, I would say,
amongst the boating fraternity. Yes,
the boating fraternity can get very heated about certain things. Compost loos v non-compost loos is definitely one of them, and I think the other is whether you black the bottom of your boat. So the first argument is the bottom of your boat is much thicker steel than the side bits, and therefore why bother, because it's so thick, even if it rusts a little bit, it's not going to be a problem. Also, there's not much oxygen down there, so it's the oxygen that causes it to rust, so another reason why not to bother blacking it. And the third argument is as soon as you pull away from the boatyard, all the stuff at the bottom of the canal, rocks and shopping trolleys and whatever, scratch the bottom off. There is a counter argument that says you should do it, and why not, if only to be on the safe side. And absolutely, especially in the London canals, there's not so much on the bottom of the canals because they're a lot deeper, so it doesn't scratch it all off. Anyway, the real reason that we didn't do it is we took one look at the disgusting, filthy, horrible, oily mud that we would have had to have laid in for 3 days to clean said boat and black the boat. It was just
there was a little bit of lying on a board in the mud and painting underneath, but only a little bit.
We could, of course, have had our boat lifted completely out of the water onto a dry dock. For those of you who don't know, that's called, I think, hard standing. So then it's much higher up and it's much easier to get under. We had about that much space, and standing under 21 tons of metal in filthy mud is kind of slightly scary. Your brain tells you it's absolutely safe and it's all on planks, but your heart kind of tells you this thing could squish you in seconds. Anyway, we didn't.
So let's get on to day two, shall we?
Day
day two, open the can of this keel black stuff. It's black like the traditional blacking, and we start painting and you're stippling it into the little crevices and craters and that, and working our way along. So that's day two.
And let me just say, for keel black, for perhaps the company listening, the trick with keel black is you put it on very, very thinly. Do not slap it on in great thick coats like you would bitumen. That's one of the big differences. That's what the chap whose company it is told us. So thin coats if you're using keel black, guys. Right. Otherwise it won't work so well.
And then day three, second blacking, all right? And then day four, third blacking. And then, so by that time that took us to something like Tuesday, Wednesday, something. So then you've got to really let it dry.
Yes, we were kind of the Walking Dead by that time.
Yeah, we were pretty exhausted.
And I had to listen to Mellow Magic for 8 hours a day, 4 days straight, which was possibly even more awful than blacking.
What's wrong with Mellow Magic?
There's a lot wrong with Mellow Magic.
I know they play the same songs every day, but
they're still going around in my head.
Yeah. So anyway, that was us, and then a couple of days to dry, and then was time to escape again, and they filled the dock up.
Oh, happy days!
And opened the gates, and out we slid back onto the canal.
Like butter off a hot knife. Until.
Well, no, let's not go there. That's another story. But I just wanted to say one thing. Something very strange happened, and that is that when our boat came down and sat on these giant wooden beams, it changed shape slightly. Because we found that our kitchen units, which are basically the centre of the boat, were jammed, that they tipped over slightly, and there was a little bump
like
in
the
floor.
boat had gone from that shape to like that shape.
And so I asked them in the boatyard, I said, do boats change shape when they get out of water? And he said, yes, they do, but when you get back on the canal, back in the water, it'll all go back. And it did. Yes. And our kitchen units work perfectly again. It's amazing.
The other thing that we're terribly excited to tell you that we did while the boat was out of the water, because this is the only time you can do it according to boat law, is we changed the name of our boat. It's terribly bad luck to change the name of your boat if it's not out the water. So we figured dry dock or standing on these wooden thingies was out of water. So we changed the name. So this is the new name of our boat. It was Trencaval before. It is now Follow Your Bliss. Yay! It's a quote from a lovely chap called...
American guy called Joseph Campbell.
Yes.
Who worked with George Lucas on the stories of the first 3 Star Wars. So he really understood kind of storytelling and characters and ancient stories and all that kind of thing.
The reason that we picked it is, the full quote is, follow your bliss and...
doors will open where you thought there were none. So let's come back to living on a narrowboat. And we've given you a lot of reasons as to why you should never, ever live on a narrowboat. But what else can you do if you don't want to black your boat yourself? Sure, you just get somebody else to do it, couldn't you?
Well, yes, you could. We did rather take the hard way round. You could actually pay a boatyard to go and do this for you. I mean, we chose not to, obviously saving some money, because it is a lot more expensive to get somebody else to do it. But also for us, it was an opportunity to see the boat from the inside out, or let's say the bottom up. And it was very interesting. You really see how the whole thing is constructed and where your anodes are and all that good stuff. So I would say I would recommend every boater doing it at least once. If you haven't done it, do. because you get to know your boat and you get to know the process. And something we heard from other boaters that we spoke to is if you want to do it really well and you want to be sure it's done really well, do it yourself, because you really can make sure you get all that stuff off the bottom and that you really do carefully put on those layers. If you do it well, I don't know, it can last a fair time. 2-3 years would be great if we don't have to do it again.
But just to round off,
well, yes,
if you're not prepared to get down and dirty, then you should never, ever live on a narrowboat. Okay?